the government and the opposition parties that are in agreement with this principle also want to move ahead quickly, Mr. Speaker. And we could have moved ahead for tomorrow morning if we'd had agreement from that fourth party here in the House of Commons. We would have been able to move ahead immediately. And Mr. Speaker, through you, I'd like to suggest to all members, we need to move rapidly on oversight, and we need to move rapidly to put in place this Parliamentary Review Committee. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank the member. When he comes back, we'll about a little over 14 minutes in his speech. Statements by members. The honourable member for Nepean.
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of over 1 million Canadians of several religious faiths, and in particular Hindu Canadians, and as a Hindu Canadian myself, I call upon members of this House and all Canadians to distinguish between the Hindu religious sacred symbol swastika and the Nazi symbol of hatred called Hakenkreuz in German, or the HoC cross in English. In the ancient Indian language of Sanskrit, swastika means that which brings good luck and well-being. This ancient and greatly auspicious symbol of the Hindu religion continues to be used today at our Hindu temples, in our religious and cultural rituals, entrances to our homes, and in our daily life. Please stop calling the Nazi symbol of hatred as swastika. We support the ban of Nazi symbol of hatred, Hakenkreuz, or the HoC cross, but calling it swastika is to deny us, Hindu Canadians, our religious right and freedom to use our sacred symbol swastika in our daily life. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Calgary-Shepherd.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in recognition of Rare Disease Day. The theme of this year's Rare Disease Day is Share Your Colours, and I offer this limerick in honour of this special day. Millions in Canada, 2/3 of them youth, battle rare disease daily, a sad, somber truth. These diseases touch families on their children, but also their parents. For those stricken with grief, I understand because I share it. My 3 oldest children battle ills of this kind, and the youngest I lost is always on my mind. We here in this chamber have a big role we share, supporting access to treatments and affordable care. So whether Team Blue, Red, Green, Orange, or Gray, please join me in celebrating this Rare Disease Day. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Winnipeg North.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. People across Canada are in solidarity showing and demonstrating support for people of Ukraine. What we're seeing in Ukraine, Mr. Speaker, today is horrific, but Canadians are responding. They're showing up at rallies, demonstrations. In my own home city of Winnipeg, thousands of people came out in solidarity for Ukraine. They're sending money. They're sending prayers. Mr. Speaker, the Government of Canada is providing lethal weapons, humanitarian aids. Canadians are coming together because of concern and love for Ukraine. And today I'm calling for this House unanimously to support the efforts of all Canadians to be there for Ukraine in solidarity as one. Long live Ukraine, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for La Pointe-Ville. The microphone is not turned on. I'd like to pay tribute to Gisèle Pomerleau, who is the founder of the Women's Centre in my riding in 1995. She defended the rights of women throughout her entire life. Her mission was to help women become aware of their own potential. And she really believed in this cause. She even dug into her personal savings to get the foundation going. She ran newspapers, plays, all sorts of ways of promoting the rights of women. She also defended the rights of seniors. On behalf of this, this pioneer will certainly not be forgotten. She marked my riding and Her name will also be on a new social housing project in my riding. Ms. Pomerleau, we will always be there to ensure that your mission continues to be carried out. Thank you.
Honourable member for Scarborough North.
Today, I am pleased to rise and recognize the C.D. Farquharson Community Association on their joyous 50th anniversary. It all began when a few residents decided to tackle such local issues as area development, education, and community infrastructure. In April 1972, the association's first president, Maurice Liberty, wrote to all residents urging them to get involved. Named after Scarborough's former medical officer of health, Dr. C.D. Farquharson, the association began with 600 households and is now 1,400 strong. Over the decades, hundreds of dedicated volunteers have worked tirelessly on projects like the creation of a neighborhood watch team and block parent program. Bravo au président actuel.
I want to congratulate the current president, Barry Laughlin, and all of their volunteers and members for having reached this phenomenal milestone. Congratulations on having built and supported what is today one of our community's most dynamic and diverse organizations. Happy 5th anniversary.
The honourable member for Battle River Crowfoot.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in this House to stand with Ukraine, its people, and for the principles of peace and democracy, and to condemn the invasion of the Ukraine by Russia. For the people of Ukraine facing war, and for the millions of Canadians of Ukrainian heritage who see their historical lands under attack, Canada's official opposition will continue to, as we have been proud to do everything we can to ensure that Canada steps up and does its part. Vladimir Putin's aggression is an alarming wake-up call to Canada and the free and democratic world, and likewise threatens the safety and security of every Canadian and democracy itself. And policy needs to reflect the geopolitical reality of our world, from doing our part to ensure that Western dollars don't pay for oil and gas that funds Russian aggression, and to ensure that there is a strong NATO that stands up for what's right. The defense of democracy in Ukraine is the defense of democracy in Canada and around the world. Slava Ukraini!
The honourable member for Scarborough Rouge Park.
Mr. Speaker, February and forever, celebrating Black history today and every day, is the theme for Black History Month this year. I'm proud to highlight two important initiatives from my riding that will be embedded in Canadian history this year and beyond. First, I want to highlight the work of Kwame Delfish, the Malvern artist who designed the 2022 Underground Railroad coin for the Royal Canadian Mint to capture the painful history and journey of people of African descent searching for freedom in Canada. Secondly, the Scarborough Charter brings together over 52 post-secondary institutions to redress anti-Black racism and to promote inclusion and equality in higher education. At its core are its guiding principles: Black flourishing, inclusive excellence, mutuality, and accountability. I want to acknowledge the leadership of Principal Wisdom Teddy and his colleagues at the University of Toronto Scarborough campus. Happy Black History Month, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Oakville North Burlington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. February is Heart Month. We recognize the importance of heart health and taking action against heart disease, a serious and growing problem and leading cause of death in Canada. For women, heart disease is the #1 cause of premature death, and 20% more women die of heart failure than men. Yet women's cardiovascular health is under-researched, and women often don't know the signs. The good news is that heart disease is preventable. Beating heart disease means focusing on women's heart health and prevention. It means implementing initiatives like mandatory front-of-package nutrition labeling to help inform busy shoppers, a tax on vaping products, and restricting flavors in vapes, which are being used by youth at alarming rates. I'd also like to acknowledge the Heart and Stroke Young Leaders, a group of professionals in their 20s and 30s, like Oakville North Burlington's Charmaine Tulloch, who are encouraging young people to adopt a healthy lifestyle and prevent heart disease. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Carlton Trail, Eagle Creek.
The Putin regime's unprovoked and unjust invasion of Ukraine has shocked millions of Canadians, including thousands in my riding, who are of Ukrainian descent. Canadians now understand that the threat from Russia is no longer theoretical. They are resolute in their support for Ukraine and want Canada to do all we can to stop the Russian aggression and restore Ukraine's territorial integrity. Canada, together with our allies, must respond with immediate and long-term actions. Canada must immediately expel the Russian ambassador to our country and recall our ambassador from Moscow. The Canadian government must act immediately to support and expand our energy sector so that the free world can have a reliable source of ethical and environmentally produced energy. Finally, the government must also take seriously our Arctic sovereignty and military preparedness. I call on this government to make these and other actions which support Ukraine and our NATO partners a priority.
The Honourable Member for Outremont. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Starting today, Canada is easing its border measures and preparing to welcome tourists back to our country in large numbers. I'm proud of our tourism sector, and we're all looking forward to a strong recovery after 2 hard years.
Today, the travel advisory is no longer in effect. And speaking as somebody working closely with our tourism industry, I can only rejoice. Rejoice that we have collectively made it to this stage of the pandemic where the easing of our border measures was possible to do safely. Mr. Speaker, the tourism industry brought in $100 billion to our GDP before the pandemic, and I, for one, want it back. Hear, hear. To all of our hardworking hotel, restaurant workers, to all of the small businesses that rely on tourism, to our fantastic tourism operators and travel agents, I say yes, go get them. And to all of the hardworking Canadians that just need a beach and a break and want to travel, I say yes, let's do this.
The Honourable Member for Fort McMurray Cold Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I, like many Canadians, am a proud descendant of Ukrainian immigrants. Seeing the solidarity of Canadians with Ukraine has reminded me that this conflict isn't just personal for Canadians with direct ties to Ukraine. This conflict is personal to parents who are seeing families separated by conflict. Seeing parents fleeing with their children and sending them to safety before returning to fight has deeply affected me and so many. This conflict is personal to anyone who believes the spirit of democracy in the face of autocrats. This conflict is personal for anyone who believes in the spirit of democracy. This conflict is personal for anyone who has seen or remembers the horror of armed conflict. I think just about every Canadian citizen has good reason to see the invasion as a personal attack, not just on the people of Ukraine, but on all of us, and we must respond accordingly. Our response to this unprovoked and despicable aggression must be strong and swift. We must continue to put pressure on Putin until the complete withdrawal of Russian forces from the sovereign nation of Ukraine. Thank you. Slavia Ukraini.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Mr. Speaker, whether you're in Lac-Mégantic, Thetford Mines, or Ottawa, our world has changed in the last few days. A whole new meaning has been given to the word freedom. Evil has awoken and displayed its true nature. Whether you're in Kyiv or Odessa today, peace has transformed into war, happiness has transformed into fear. Whether you're in Moscow or St. Petersburg, mothers and fathers are learning that their children and neighbors are taking up arms against their Ukrainian neighbors. Solidarity has awoken around the world in the face of this savage aggression that is both unjustified and unprovoked. This aggression, all it does is satisfy the desires of a leader who cannot be satisfied. We cannot stand silent. We must take action. I invite all parliamentarians in all democracies around the world to stand united against this dictator, Putin, to stand up for the Ukrainian people, and to stand up for peace, Mr. Speaker. The honourable member for Alfred Pélan. Mr. Speaker, last week the Minister of Housing and Diversity and Inclusion announced the creation of 1,458 social and affordable housing units as part of the second Canada-Quebec Agreement on Rapid Housing Initiative. I'm very happy that my riding of Alfred-Pellan will be benefiting from one of the 79 projects that are part of this initiative. An amount of $11,390,000 is being attributed to the Office Municipal de Laval for a new project that will see the building of 24 new housing units for vulnerable low-income people. Our government continues to support cities in order to meet housing needs and to ensure that Quebecers, and Laval residents in particular, can experience the peace of mind of home ownership. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Timmins, James Bay.
10 years ago, the Parliament of Canada came together in an extraordinary motion of solidarity by unanimously passing Shannon's dream to end the systemic underfunding of First Nation education. Shannon Kustashin had never seen a real school, but at the age of 13, she stood up to the brutal conditions in her home community of Attawapiskat First Nation, and she launched the largest youth-driven children's rights movement in Canadian history, forever changing the discussion about Indigenous rights in Canada. Shannon Kustashin never lived long enough to see this historic vote in Parliament or the beautiful school that is in her community. She died in a terrible highway accident at 15, but is now commemorated as one of the 150 most influential women in Canadian history. If Shannon were here today, she'd tell you that the fight is not finished. That yes, we've come a long way, but children continue to have their rights denied through underfunding in a broken federal system. Shannon had a dream that all her little brothers and sisters could go to a comfy school and have their dreams realized. It is our duty to make Shannon's dream a reality for this generation.
The Honourable Member for Montarville. Mr. Speaker, over the past few days, the world has been following the situation in Ukraine with concern and shock, indignation and anger. The specter of war has returned to haunt that country. The people's fears are well-founded, and it's difficult to see hope in some of these dark days. But hope may be found where it was not expected, in the streets of Moscow, St. Petersburg, and elsewhere in Russia, where thousands of Russians are bravely marching. Over the last few days, the Russian police have made 6,000 arrests, according to AFP, and yet the rallying cry, "No to war," continues to ring out. The voice of peace continues to be heard. It's not the Russian people who invaded Ukraine, it's the Russian government. Let's not confuse that. On behalf of the Bloc Québécois, I'd like to highlight the courage of these women and men who, at the cost of their own freedom, are marching on behalf of peace, for Ukrainians, for Russians, and for the world.
The honourable member for Selkirk, Interlake, Eastman.
Mr. Speaker, unbelievably, our worst nightmare has been realized with war again in Europe. Vladimir Putin's illegal and unjustified full-scale war against our beloved Ukraine has shocked the free world. No matter the cost, no matter what roadblocks Russia tries to put up, there can be no excuses. Canada and the West must do whatever it takes to support Ukraine. Nothing should be off the table. The cost of not supporting Ukraine in this fight is too great. It means the dictators, the despots, and thugs around the world can redraw the lines of a map by force and get away with it. This is a pivotal moment in modern history of the world. What Canada does now matters. Let's be clear. The illusion of the peace dividend from the end of the Cold War has been shattered. The barbarian Vladimir Putin must be held accountable for the atrocity he is committing in Ukraine now. The bravery of the people of Ukraine has inspired us. The skill of the Ukrainian military and the courage of the citizens who are taking up arms against Russian tyranny is nothing short of breathtaking. Canada stands shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine. Slava Ukraini!
Slava Ukraini! The honourable member for Bonavista Buren Trinity.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize a true hero that was recently lost in my riding of Bonavista Buren Trinity. He was the last remaining survivor of the SS Caribou sinking, veteran Hidley Lake. From Fortune, Newfoundland and Labrador, he served with the British Royal Navy during the Second World War and later was deployed to Korea. He was one of the 101 survivors of the German attack on the Newfoundland passenger ferry in 1942. At age 24, he did everything possible to save as many lives as he could following that fatal torpedo attack. Loved by everyone in his hometown, he lived a full life to the age of 103 and brought so much joy and wisdom to everyone he met. I visited with him a couple of times and proudly presented him with a certificate for his 100th birthday, which brought a huge smile to his face. He truly appreciated. Mr. Speaker, on behalf of this House, I want to send condolences to Mr. Lake's family and the entire town of Fortune on this great loss. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Oral questions, question orale. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Ukraine is heartbreaking and growing more troubling by the hour. We also know it is constantly evolving, and although Conservatives support the government's actions to date, we do believe there are things that could have been done faster. Many of the government's actions were too little, too late. One thing we are asking the Canadian government to do right away is to expel Russia's ambassador to Canada and recall our ambassador from Russia. Will the government commit to doing that immediately?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Canada and Canadians are united in our support for the brave people of Ukraine and their extraordinary president, Volodymyr Zelensky. This is a fight between freedom and tyranny. Ukrainians are fighting for themselves and for all of us. As I rise today for the first time in this House, I'd like to say to the people of Ukraine, from everyone in this House, how deeply we respect and admire them. Slava Ukraini.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and we agree with the Minister wholeheartedly. We think that there are more things that we can do to help the Ukrainian people. Ukrainians are fleeing their country and they're looking for a safe place, but we know they don't want to be permanent refugees. They want to be able to live in a safe, peaceful, and sovereign Ukraine. Canadians and Canada can be a safe haven for them. We have the opportunity right now to host Ukrainians that are being displaced by the Putin invasion. One of the things that we could do is allow visa-free travel for Ukrainians coming to Canada. Will the government commit today to remove the requirements for visas for Ukrainians coming to Canada?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, in her previous question, the Leader of the Opposition asked about the Russian ambassador, and I would like to address that. Now is a time when everyone in the world must pick a side. A few brave Russian officials have spoken out against Putin's barbaric war. We encourage all Russians to oppose this war. Silence is complicity, and following orders is not an excuse. And so when it comes to Canada's response, everything is on the table.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you. We look forward to a decision from the government on that very quickly. Speaker, many are saying what we've been saying for a long time, and that is that Canada and the world needs to end its dependency on Russian oil and gas. Canada imports almost $1 million worth of Russian oil every day. The Prime Minister has spent the last 6 years waging a war on Canadian oil and gas. That needs to end. It's bad for Canada. It's bad for the world. It only helps Russia. When will the Prime Minister stop our dependency on Russian oil and instead work to get Canadian oil and gas to the world?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, today Canada, together with our allies, took unprecedented action against a world-leading economy. We have hamstrung Russia's central bank, thus depriving Putin of access to his war chest. We have shown that sanctions do work and Fortress Russia is exposed. We agree that oil and gas do fund Putin's war machine, and we're working on that too.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-l'Érable. Mr. Speaker, Putin has gone too far and we have to take action. since the Second World War, this is the toughest attack we've seen. They've attacked Ukrainian civilians. We think that the government can and must do more. Putin's regime cannot continue to maintain relations with Canada. Can we declare the Russian's ambassador to Canada a persona non grata and recall our ambassador from Moscow immediately? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I would like to say in French that we are in support of the Ukrainian people. Canada and Canadians are united in their support to the Ukrainian people and their extraordinary president. Ukrainians are fighting for themselves and for us all. I would like to benefit from this opportunity to tell them that all of Canada respects them and admires them. The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Mr. Speaker, I've been told that Ukrainians who are displaced are having a hard time finding safety, and they are providing free taxi services at the border and free shelter. Romania is establishing camps to help Ukrainians, and many people are seeking to flee the country. And now we expect the Canadian government to announce something today. What is the Canada going to do today to help Ukrainians who are displaced? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I as well have family in Ukraine, and our Canadian family has spoken with our family in Ukraine on Saturday morning. We wanted to help our family in Ukraine and find a way for them to come to Canada. Our family in Ukraine said no. We're staying here in Ukraine because we believe that we have to fight for our freedom. Yes, we do have to help Ukrainians who want to come to Canada, but at the same time, we are helping Ukrainians who remain in their country. The Honourable Member for La Prairie. On behalf of the Bloc, I would once again condemn Russia for its inhumane and unfounded attack on Ukraine. I would also like to express our solidarity, as I believe, as does the entire Quebec nation, in Ukrainian people and their courageous resistance. Today, history expects us all to do everything we can to protect these people, to protect their country and families. I offer the Deputy Prime Minister the full support of the Bloc in maximizing aid to Ukraine and sanctions against its aggressors. Can she elaborate on what she expects from the opposition? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I think there is great sympathy between the Ukrainian people and the Quebec people. I think we understand each other. So I'd like to thank my colleague for his statement. Today, with our allies, we imposed sanctions that are unprecedented on the Russian economy. The Russian fortress will be unmasked. The Honourable Member for La Prairie. Mr. Speaker, we are facing a war and a humanitarian crisis. More than 500,000 people have fled the Ukraine, and the EU fears that this number will rise to 7 million. The government can do more for these families. It can help lift visas to speed up the arrival of Ukrainians who want to take temporary refuge. It can automatically extend all of its existing permits and visas to ease concerns. Will the Deputy Prime Minister take advantage of the support of the Bloc to do everything she can to help these displaced people? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Our government understands very personally that there is also a humanitarian crisis in Ukraine, and we also understand that Canada has the obligation to support Ukrainians and to give them refuge. And for this reason, we have already started to welcome Ukrainians, including Ukrainians who are here in Canada and who cannot go back to their home now. The Honourable Member for Rosemont-La Petite Patrie. Inaudible for the interpreter.
Vous êtes en sourd.
You're on mute. Please begin your question again.
Est-ce que vous m'entendez maintenant?
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Yes. Go ahead. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. More than 500,000 refugees have left Ukraine in the wake of Putin's brutal invasion. They traveled by crowded trains, by car, and sometimes on foot, mostly women and children. And these people are seeking refuge while Putin bombs their homes. The Liberals have already failed refugees before, and recently the Ukrainian people need our help. Will the Prime Minister cut red tape, suspend visas, and welcome home Ukrainians driven from their country by Vladimir Putin's attack? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister, thank you very much for this question, Mr. Speaker. And I'm very happy that today we unanimously agree in this House that all parties, the Conservatives, the Bloc, the NDP, and obviously our government, support Ukraine and the brave Ukrainian people. It was important, and I'm proud of that. With respect to refugees from the Ukraine, we are here for them. We've already done a lot, and we will do more. They need our support, and they will have it.
Honourable member for Vancouver East.
Canadians are watching in horror as hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians seek refuge from the unprovoked Russian invasion. The Liberals cannot recreate the disaster in Afghanistan, where those who risk everything to help our country were left behind. The European Union, and most recently Ireland, has already waived the requirements for visas for Ukrainians. And the NDP has been calling on the Liberals to do the same, but this morning, immigration officials said it's not even on the table. Time is of the essence. Will the government immediately waive visa requirements for Ukrainians?
Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I agree with the member opposite that the world is watching in horror at what is happening in Ukraine. But you know what, Mr. Speaker? I am also watching in pride at the incredibly brave resistance of the people of Ukraine. And it is important for us to say that we continue to support them in their fight. When it comes to refugees, of course, Canada is there for Ukrainians. We have been, we will be, and we'll have more to say soon.
The honourable member for Wellington, Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, Canada, like Ukraine, shares a border with Russia, our Arctic. We no longer can afford to take our sovereignty and security for granted. Russia considers the Arctic to be its most important theater, its most important region, and has spent considerable resources over the last decade building up capabilities there. Will the government now act urgently to protect Canadian sovereignty and security by purchasing the F-35 jets, by fixing our naval shipbuilding program, and by immediately modernizing NORAD's early warning system?
The Honourable Minister of Defence.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my honourable colleague for raising the issue of Arctic sovereignty, which our government takes extremely seriously. We are making landmark investments in this area, conducting joint exercises in the Arctic, purchasing 6 Arctic offshore patrol ships, enhancing surveillance. We will remain firm and unwavering in the protection of our Arctic, Mr. Speaker, including in modernizing NORAD. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Wellington, Halton Hills.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the government isn't participating in joint military exercises between the United States and Scandinavian countries that have been taking place over the last year in the Arctic. Mr. Speaker, Russia supplies 40% of Europe's natural gas and uses this to threaten European democracies by threatening to cut off gas. Canada is the 5th largest natural gas producer in the world. Will the government now commit to fixing our broken pipeline approval process so that we can get new pipelines built to Atlantic tidewater, so that we can come to the assistance of European democracies by replacing Russian gas with Canadian natural gas?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The current situation in the Ukraine certainly underscores the importance of energy security for Canada and for its allies. We are working very closely with our colleagues in the United States and in Europe to address short-term energy volatility, but also to explore long-term energy options.
Honourable member for South Surrey, White Rock.
Mr. Speaker, for a month, Conservatives called on this government to provide Ukraine with lethal aid to defend itself from Russian aggression. The response? Next to nothing until it was too late. Right. The Ukrainian General Staff urgently needs bulletproof vests, MREs, meals ready to eat, canned goods like meat, fish, and vegetables, anti-tank and anti-aircraft missiles. Thoughts and prayers are not enough. Yes. When will Canada deliver?
The Honourable Minister of Defence.
Speaker, in this age of information and disinformation, I think it is important for us to be aware of the facts. Canada delivered successfully $7 million worth of lethal aid to Ukraine prior to the onset of the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. And I want this House of Commons to know that not only did we deliver that $7 million of aid, we also delivered $3 million of non-lethal aid, $700 million of economic support, Mr. Speaker. We stand united with Ukraine.
The Honourable Member for South Surrey, White Rock.
Mr. Speaker, this government is challenged on so many levels to act in a timely manner. National security and foreign affairs is where it fails its duty the most. The government sat on its hands and watched 175,000 Russian troops move to Ukraine's borders and then launch an all-out invasion. Our allies have sent a €5 billion package of aircraft, vehicles, anti-tank weapons, and Stinger launchers. Small arms, sniper rifles, and well wishes don't cut it. When will this government give Ukraine anti-tank and anti-aircraft weapons and...
The Honourable Minister.
Multiple conversations with Defense Minister Reznikov from Ukraine, and we have provided support that Ukraine has requested, including lethal and non-lethal aid, including economic and financial aid, Mr. Speaker, and we are in constant touch with Ukraine. In fact, Minister Reznikov called Canada a very, very dear friend, and I look forward to continuing to support him and his country in this time of need. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Charlesbourg, Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, Vladimir Putin has just put the country's nuclear power on alert. And I would remind everyone that Russia is our neighbor in the northwest, and Russia is close to Canada. And today, our Prime Minister is panicking because he did not modernize the early warning system and has not bought the F-35 jets. Is he aware of this, that we're at risk, and what do they plan to do? The Honourable Minister of Defence. Mr. Speaker, Canada will continue to work with its American partners to ensure that NORAD is modernized so that we can tackle the current challenges to protect the Arctic and its sovereignty. And that is why we have committed to $250 million approximately until the end of 2021 in initial investments. And we are going to continue to work with our partners in the U.S. to respect our sovereignty in the Arctic. The Honourable Member for Charlesbourg-Saint-Charles. $250 million is just for maintenance, but these systems are out of date and they have to be changed urgently. Another issue we have is Alouette in Sept-Îles has been subject to a cyber attack from Russia, and these attacks will undoubtedly increase. The Prime Minister has seen this, and he said he's doing everything to ensure the safety of Canadians. But we're talking about a Russian cyber threat. Can the Minister reassure us that Canada has the necessary resources to protect our Canadian companies from Russian cyber attacks? The Honourable Minister of Defence. Cyber attacks are part of Russia's strategy, and we have to strengthen our cybersecurity to protect our companies. The Telecom Security Centre does have the tools it needs to protect Canada and Canadians. And I meet with the leader of this centre regularly, and we are here for Canadians in terms of cybersecurity. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Montarville. Mr. Speaker, I would like to reiterate our unwavering support for Ukrainians who are fighting to protect their country, their city, their homes, and above all, the people they love. Today, Canada and its allies must send a historic message to Russia, to Vladimir Putin, but also to all the leaders of today and tomorrow. The price of war must be as high as possible, and the aggressors must be isolated. Is the minister taking steps with her partners to exclude Russia from the G20 rather? The Honourable Minister, Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. The Russian has been the object of economic sanctions from Canada and our allies. Our goal is to exert maximum pressure on Putin's regime. The support we announced yesterday is a key step, and we will do more. All options remain on the table to respond to this escalating crisis. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Montarville. Mr. Speaker, the message from NATO countries must be historic, clear. I repeat, the price for starting a war must be as high as possible, and the aggressors must be isolated. And all aggressors must be targeted. Belarus has disgraced itself by allowing Russia to use its territory to facilitate the invasion of Ukraine. Minsk even seems to be on the verge of having its own troops involved. Is the minister planning to take steps to convince her partners to apply every single sanction against Russia and Belarus? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, of course, we are continuing to work with our partners. And what will we do? We will continue to implement sanctions. We have already involved 33 million soldiers. We're going to give considerable support, lethal and non-lethal aid as well. And we will continue to work with NATO in the West as well. The Honourable Member for Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, the first victims of war are always citizens, and this is once again true here. Already 500,000 of Ukrainians have had to leave their country, leaving behind loved ones and their entire lives. As parliamentarians, we have a historic duty to help them. Recently, the government announced that it would match every donation made to the Red Cross by a Canadian, but there's a cap of $10 million. Mr. Speaker, I think we all agree that this cap is not appropriate. Will the government remove it and commit to do everything possible to help Ukrainians in forced exile? The Honourable Minister.
For that question, and I want to thank all the Canadians for their generous donations to the Red Cross to support the Ukrainian people. We will do more. We're monitoring the situation very closely and getting an understanding of what is needed, and then providing appropriate support. This will be in addition to the $50 million for humanitarian development support that we have already provided. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Calgary Centre.
$500 million. Mr. Speaker, Canada sends $500 million per year to Russia to import their oil. The government has clearly chosen against building Canadian pipelines. The result is the decision by this Liberal government to instead fund the oppressive regime in Russia. The government boasts giving $120 million to Ukraine and then sends $500 million per year to Russia to fund Putin's war machine. Right. Does the government now realize that their choices on killing Canadian energy projects has funded Russia's invasion of Ukraine?
Yes. The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I said earlier, the current situation in Ukraine underscores the importance of energy security, both in Canada and with our allies in Europe. We are working actively with our allies on both short-term and longer-term energy supply options, and with respect to the ongoing ensuring that energy security is top of mind in Europe. I would correct my honourable colleague that in 2019 was the last date on which crude oil was imported into Canada, so his figures are actually incorrect.
The honourable member for Sarnia-Lambton.
Well, Mr. Speaker, Canadian oil is the most environmentally sustainable on the planet, and refineries in my riding are part of the energy economy that's a fifth of our GDP. So why does Liberal ideology always want to shut down Canadian oil in favor of production from dictators and people who violate human rights?
The honourable minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Certainly the oil and gas sector in this country is an important part of this economy, will continue to be an important part of this economy. But as I said to the previous questioner, Mr. Speaker, the honourable member is simply incorrect. The last time on which crude oil was imported into Canada at the Irving Oil Refinery was in 2019.
The honourable member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, as long as we need oil and natural gas, we will always be on this side of the House a proud supporter of this Canadian energy. But over the past 20 years, Canada has purchased $13 billion in oil from Putin's Russia. And I'm sorry, but we don't need that. And what is this government doing? It wants to gradually end Canada's oil capacity. Why does this Liberal government, with its stubborn attitude, prefer to encourage dictators rather than promote our Canadian energy? The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Canada is one of the, well, under our government, oil imports continue to diminish to the lowest level in 10 years. And of course, Mr. Speaker, it is a key issue, and we are working with our partners in Europe and in the U.S. to ensure energy security.
For Victoria.
Mr. Speaker, today's IPCC report is a dire warning about the consequences of empty Liberal promises. The brief window to ensure a livable future is rapidly closing. While Canadians are scared about the future, the Prime Minister is sticking his head in the sand. He's ignoring the science, handing out billions to big oil and gas, and buying pipelines to fight the climate crisis. Canada has missed every single climate target. We have the worst record of any G7 country. We are in a climate emergency. When is the government going to start acting like it?
Honourable Minister of the Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my honourable colleague for her question. The IPCC report shows what people around the world already know, that countries need to take bold action to tackle climate change and adaptation action to fight climate change. We must continue to cut our emissions and build resiliency through our society. Canadians cannot afford another term of conservative inaction on this file, Mr. Speaker. Since we took office in 2015, our government has committed more than $100 billion to climate action, and we're now developing Canada's first ever national adaptation strategy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Timmins, James Bay.
Well, the planet can't afford this environment, Minister. I encourage him to actually read the IPCC report, which has been described as, quote, an atlas of human suffering and a damning indictment of failed climate leadership. Well, there you go, Exhibit 1. This government held 6,800 backroom meetings with big oil. They've left taxpayers on the hook for $21 billion pipeline. They've given heavy subsidies to oil, who are now talking about massive increases in production. To the Environment Minister, the planet is on fire. Why is he letting the big oil lobby lead him around by the nose when he should be standing up for Canadians and standing up for the planet?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank my honourable colleague for his question. I would remind him that through carbon pricing, we went all the way to Supreme Court, against 4 provinces, Mr. Speaker, including his province and my own, to ensure that we can use one of the best tools to fight climate change, which is carbon pricing, Mr. Speaker. We're still, unfortunately, fighting in the courts against some provinces to continue being able to fight for Canadians, for the health of our children and grandchildren when it comes to climate change. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Ottawa South.
Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister responsible for the Federal Economic Development Agency for Southern Ontario. Many business owners, Mr. Speaker, from my riding of Ottawa South had to close their downtown establishments in the face of the illegal blockades. The occupation carried on for more than 20 days, and the cost to local businesses is simply staggering. Could the Minister please update this House on what measures the government's taking to help these very hard-hit small businesses?
Good question. The Honourable Minister.
On February 19, 2022, I announced that the Government of Canada would make an investment of up to $20 million to provide non-repayable contributions to Ottawa businesses which have suffered financial loss due to the illegal blockades. This announcement reinforces our government's commitment to helping communities, families and businesses build a strong and resilient economic recovery. We continue to work to ensure businesses affected get the supports they need. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Lakeland.
Mr. Speaker, the Coutts, Emerson and Windsor borders were cleared before the Prime Minister invoked the Emergencies Act. It wasn't required for demonstrators to leave Ottawa either. Security and financial experts say there were no real threats to Canada and no suspicious financial activity. A lawyer who actually helped draft the act said it was unnecessary, that the burden of proof was not convincingly met, and that there was, quote, no evidence of a threat to the security of Canada. So what changed between the Prime Minister supporting it on Monday night and revoking it on Wednesday?
Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, the Emergencies Act was essential to law enforcement's success in ending blockades and protests across the country. We always said that we would not keep the Act in force for any longer than was necessary, and we made good on that commitment. And as we've said since the beginning, we're acting on the advice of law enforcement and giving them the tools they need. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to provide all of the enforcement tools that are required to maintain public safety, and I again want to thank all of the members of the RCMP and law enforcement for the exceptional job that they did. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Lakeland.
But, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister implied protesters were terrorists. On Friday, the Deputy Director of FinTrack was asked if terrorists were using crowdfunding platforms to launder money. He said, quote, we haven't seen them, it's not a high risk. But Canadians' accounts were frozen and sweeping powers were put in place. Last week, Conservatives asked if the Liberals got a legal opinion. The Justice Minister just said that he felt standards were met, which is, of course, not an actual legal assessment. So I'll ask again, will the Liberals release the legal opinion to Canadians, and what changed in 36 hours?
The Honourable Minister of...
Mr. Speaker, the Emergencies Act was brought in the mid-'80s in direct response to the Charter of Rights and Freedoms in this country. It provides for rigorous parliamentary oversight, both in this place and in the other place. It also provides for a review. And, Mr. Speaker, most importantly, the Act requires that every measure that is undertaken under the Act be compliant with the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Mr. Speaker, we will always respect the Charter.
The Honourable Member for Northumberland, Peterborough South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last Monday evening, despite the objections of the Conservative Party, the Bloc Québécois, and even members of their own caucus, this government voted in support of invocation of the Emergency Measures Act. By this time, the blockades, the protests, they'd all resolved, yet unbelievably, less than 48 hours, this government did a complete 180 and revoked the Act. My question is simple. What changed?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, I want to be clear that the impact of the illegal blockades was devastating. We saw borders shut. We saw Canadians who were laid off. We saw our communities and our neighbourhoods that were endangered. And that's the reason why we had to invoke the Emergencies Act. And we did so on the basis of non-partisan professional advice from law enforcement. The Canadian Association of the Chiefs of Police supported us. The Canadian Association of Police supported us. Mr. Speaker, and all of the measures that were exercised were done so with restraint, professionally, and in a manner that was consistent with the Charter, Mr. Speaker. That's what we expected from law enforcement. They carried out their responsibilities with great professionalism, and we thank them for their work. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Haldimand, Norfolk.
Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister used the Emergency Measures Act against protesters to freeze bank accounts, impound vehicles, arrest protesters, all which could have been done with existing laws and bylaws. Canadians were led to believe that protesters were involved in acts of sedition and plots to overthrow this government. Yet, just charges relating to mischief were laid. Other than dropping in poll numbers, exactly what changed in 36 hours for this Prime Minister to terminate the use of the Emergencies Act?
That's a good question. The Honourable Member for Emergency Services.
Well, Mr. Speaker, what I can very simply explain to my colleague across the way is that the emergency measures and the measures that we provided to law enforcement worked, Mr. Speaker. And in fact, we saw the illegal blockades that were tormenting the people of Ottawa removed from their streets, and the threat against our international borders and trade corridors was successfully removed, Mr. Speaker. We relied on the information from the RCMP and from our law enforcement partners to determine what was required. We provided them with the tools to do the job, and Mr. Speaker, they did the job very ably.
The Honourable Member for Avignon-Métis-Matapedia. Mr. Speaker, on Monday, the government triggered a vote on the first ever invocation of the Emergencies Act in history. 44 hours later, on Wednesday, it announced that it was revoking the Act. So there was the biggest national emergency of the 21st century on Monday night, but on Wednesday afternoon, no emergency at all. Can the Minister explain in detail what happened and what he was advised to do during those 44 hours, or does he admit that we never needed emergency measures after all? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, the Emergency Measures Act was essential to allow policing bodies to end the blockade and protest throughout the country. We've always said that we shall maintain the Act as long as necessary and then remove it when it was no longer necessary. The Commissioner for the RCMP stated that the EMA had a strong deterrent effect on the protests by encouraging disengagement and by conferring greater legitimacy to the RCMP and to its counterparts, the Honourable Member for Avignon-Métis-Matapedia. Mr. Speaker, I think that the Minister was read from the wrong sheet, because there are many questions like this that the government refuses to answer, and yet the public has a right to know. That is why the Bloc Québécois welcomes the Prime Minister's commitment to expand the inquiry into the use of emergency measures to include the role of the police, the financing of the convoy and misinformation, but this should not be done behind closed doors under government control. So will the government commit to a public and independent inquiry? The Honourable Minister for Canadian Heritage. Mr. Speaker, I'm trying to understand the Bloc Québécois. For a while, they were saying, oh, God, the government isn't doing enough. The government isn't doing enough. But now we're doing too much. We're doing too much. We're doing too much. What is the just middle for the Bloc Québécois? Our measures were targeted, they were temporary, and they were under a framework, and they did the job.
Well, member for Dufferin-Caledon.
Mr. Speaker, in October, a constituent sent me an email. She works for the federal government. She said to me if she didn't get a vaccine, she would lose her job, despite the fact that she was working remotely and could continue to work remotely. I received another message from a constituent that works for CP Rail. Same situation. Get a vaccine or lose your job. She worked remotely in IT. Wow. These mandates are hurting Canadian families at a time when everything is more expensive. Ontario is lifting vaccine mandates March 1st. When will they lift the mandates or give us a plan to do it?
Yes.
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, vaccines are the best way to bring this pandemic to an end. And we asked employees of the Federal Public Service to attest to their vaccination status, and they stepped up. 99% of public servants stepped up. Now, the policy will be reviewed every 6 months, and we will make sure that it is determined when it's still required. And we know that having a fully vaccinated workforce means that not only are work sites safer, so are the communities where this large population lives and works. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Yellowhead.
Mr. Speaker, in my province of Alberta, some provincial restrictions have been lifted. Other restrictions, according to our Premier, will be lifted very soon. With hospitalization rates decreasing, many constituents in my riding are asking why the Liberal government has no plan to remove all federal mandates. Mr. Speaker, Canadians want to get their lives back. When will this Liberal government listen to science and provinces to remove all federal mandates?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very glad to hear my colleagues speak about science, because science has been very clear over the last year and a half, Mr. Speaker. What works is vaccination. Vaccination is not punishment. Vaccination is protection. Almost 90% of adult Canadians have been vaccinated twice. We are very grateful to the scientists of this country and other places that have provided us with vaccines that work and are effective.
The Honourable Member for Moose Jaw Lake Centre, Lanigan.
Mr. Speaker, in my home province of Saskatchewan, Premier Moe has announced the dropping of public health measures. He was regularly consulting with his chief public health officer while holding press conferences to keep citizens informed. Many other provinces have announced their own plans to drop provincial mandates while regularly consulting their chief public health officers. This government has for the last 2 years been saying that they are listening to science, but the chief federal health officer has been inconsistent at best. When will the government drop the mandates?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very pleased to speak about Saskatchewan. I want to congratulate my colleague, the Health Minister, Minister Merriman, for all his hard work and collaboration over the last few months. We worked really well together on rapid testing, on PPE, on the Paxlovid treatment against COVID-19, on vaccination. I want to congratulate all people in Saskatchewan for having been vaccinated in so large numbers.
The Honourable Member for Etobicoke Centre.
Mr. Speaker, over the last few days, what we've seen in Ukraine is a brutal military assault by Vladimir Putin's regime in Russia on Ukraine, on democracy, and on the international rules-based order that protects countries and civilians around the world. There are countless men, women, and children who, as we speak, are being killed, who are displaced, and who desperately need humanitarian assistance. Could the Minister of International Development please share with this House and with Canadians what Canada is doing to provide humanitarian assistance to the people of Ukraine?
The Honourable Minister of International Development.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the member of Etobicoke Centre for his strong leadership and for advocating for the people of Ukraine. Canada is deeply concerned about the deepening humanitarian crisis in Ukraine that has been caused by President Putin, and we are monitoring the situation very closely on the ground. And this is why our government provided $50 million to support development and humanitarian aid, over $620 million in loan offers, and just on Friday we announced that we would match up to $10 million, the generous donation of Canadians to support Ukrainians through the Ukrainian Red Cross and the ICRC, and we will do more. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Mission Matsky, Fraser Canyon.
Mr. Speaker, it's now been 8 months since a wildfire completely destroyed the community of Lytton in my riding. My constituents still need help to get back home. Nearly 2 years ago, this government provided blank checks without applications to select cities for housing projects under the Rapid Housing Initiative, Major City Stream. What specific assistance will the minister provide to the village of Lytton to build purpose-built housing for vulnerable Canadians who lost everything?
The Honourable Minister for Housing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the member's question and his concern and advocacy for his community. The Rapid Housing Initiative has far exceeded its initial targets. We've delivered over 10,250 new permanent affordable housing units for Canada's most vulnerable individuals, including those experiencing homelessness and those who are at risk of experiencing homelessness. The member opposite knows from his time as my critic that we have a number of programs in the National Housing Strategy for different kinds of housing needs across the housing spectrum, and I'm willing to work with him to address the needs of his community, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Brantford-Brant.
Mr. Speaker, my riding of Brantford-Brant includes 2 First Nation reserves, one of which is the largest in the country.
And it breaks my heart when I review reports like the ones released by the Chiefs of Ontario and the Ontario Drug Policy Research Network. It stated that opiate deaths doubled among First Nations people in Ontario during the pandemic. The opiate crisis was recognized by every party during this past election. How many more lives need to be lost before this government starts taking the opiate crisis seriously?
The Honourable Minister for Indigenous Services.
Mr. Speaker, I share the member's deep concern for the mental health of all Indigenous people who are struggling with so many crises that have led to increases of all kinds of substance use problems and disorders. We have been working closely with First Nations communities on programs and supports that are Indigenous-led that will lead to better outcomes, mental health outcomes, better health for Indigenous people across this country. Mr. Speaker, I agree with the member opposite that we must do more, but it must be Indigenous-led, and that's the commitment of this government, Mr. Speaker, to work with Indigenous partners to ensure they have what they need.
The Honourable Member for Coast of Bay Central Notre Dame.
Mr. Speaker, the Equinor Bay du Nord project presents an opportunity for Newfoundland and Labrador to accelerate economic growth coming out of this pandemic. Every barrel of low-carbon, ethically produced oil from our offshore displaces a barrel of high-carbon, foreign blood oil coming from Russia and the Middle East. On December 6, 2021, the Environmental Assessment Agency approved Equinor to proceed with Bay du Nord. Will the Environment Minister respect the process and approve this project? Yes or no?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The approval of this particular project is currently with the Minister of Environment and Climate Change, and therefore I'm not going to comment on the process. But I will say that our commitment has been unwavering in its commitment to support it.
I'm going to interrupt the Honourable Minister.
What a joke.
Okay, I'm just going to wait till everything calms down before we start up again. We started off really well. We're near the end. Let's see if we can make it extend a bit. The Honourable Minister of Environment, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We remain committed to supporting energy workers in Canada and certainly to working with Newfoundland and Labrador specifically, certainly from the Lower Churchills project, which will provide Newfoundlanders and Labradorians with clean energy for decades to come, the Offshore Emissions Reduction Fund to help offshore workers. We have been there. We will continue to be there, working strongly with Newfoundland and Labrador to advance the economic agenda of that province and going forward.
The Honourable Member for Chateauguay-Lacolle. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Across Canada, our public transportation systems have been devastated by the pandemic. Effective public transportation systems are essential for communities to thrive economically. Could the Minister of Tourism and Associate Minister for Finance explain how our government is supporting the rebuilding of public transit? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to express my full solidarity with the people of Ukraine. The Honourable Member for Chateauguay-Lacolle is right. That is the reason for which our government will provide municipalities with an additional $750 million in transit funding. This funding will help fill some of the operational gaps caused by the pandemic. There are two very important conditions for this funding: that our provincial and territorial partners match the amount we are providing, and that provincial and territorial governments match the federal contribution. That's good news, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Elmwood Transcona.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians are just getting slammed by the rising costs of housing, gas, and groceries, among other things. A new poll reveals that over half of Canadians don't feel they can keep up with the rising cost of living. While most people are falling further behind, the ultra-rich are getting richer using tax havens and loopholes. Where's the help for everybody else? Canadians would benefit from a cap on cell phone and internet bills, national pharmacare, and policies to cool the housing market. When can Canadians expect that help from this government?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we absolutely understand the challenges that Canadian families face with affordability, and that is why our government has acted and continues to act. We created the Canada Child Benefit, which is indexed to inflation. And today, a single mother with 2 children will receive up to $13,600 from the CCB. We lowered taxes for the middle class twice and raised them on the wealthiest 1%. We provided seniors with a one-time payment of $500 last summer, and we're increasing the OAS by 10%, Mr. Speaker. And of course, early learning and childcare, which will be transformative for young families.
The Honourable Member for Spadina, Fort York.
Mr. Speaker, last week I met with Ilya and Ludmila in my constituency office. They will soon be Canadian citizens and are excited to begin the next chapter of their lives. However, Ludmila also told me that she's worried about her mom and her family who are living in bomb shelters. And in Ukraine, others are in long lines of refugees at the Polish border. Mr. Speaker, over 115,000 refugees are heading for safety in Poland. Thousands are also going to Romania and any EU country offering sanctuary. However, resources are being stretched to the brink. Can the Minister of Global Affairs inform the House if Canada will provide assistance to countries opening their borders to the Ukrainian exodus?
The Honourable Minister of Immigration.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the Honourable Member for his question. And Putin's war in Ukraine is an attack not just on the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine, but on the idea of democracy in Europe itself. We started preparing more than a month ago to welcome newcomers from Ukraine to Canada. On January 19th, we started a process internal to our department to process applications on a priority basis and have now processed more than 3,800 already. We've also created new pathways for people who are already in Ukraine to make it easier for them to stay and to work while they are here so they can support themselves. In the very near future, Mr. Speaker, we're going to be announcing new measures to make it easier and faster for Ukrainians who are fleeing the war to find safety here in Canada.
And I'm afraid that's all the time we have for today. C'est tout le temps que nous avons aujourd'hui. Nous avons l'honneur.
We have the Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean rising on a point of order, I believe. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There have been consultations among the parties, and I think you'll find unanimous consent for the following motion. That this House reiterate the motion passed unanimously on January 27th, 2021, and call on the new Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship to exercise, in the case of Raif Badawi, his discretion under Section 5 of the Citizenship Act in order to grant citizenship to any person to alleviate cases of special and unusual hardship. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. All those opposed to the Honourable Member moving the motion will please say nay.
D'accord.
Very well. The House has heard the terms of the motion. All those opposed to the motion will please say nay.
Adopté.
Carried.
The Honourable Member for Etobicoke Centre is rising on a point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there have been discussions among the parties, and if you seek it, I hope you'll find unanimous consent to adopt the following motion. That given the Russian Federation's unprovoked and unjustified attack on Ukraine, this House, A, condemns the unjustified and unprovoked attack which was ordered by Russian President Vladimir Putin as a clear violation of international law, the UN Charter, and the rights of Ukraine to sovereignty, territorial integrity, freedom, and democracy. B, condemns the illegal recognition by the Russian Federation of the Ukrainian regions of Donetsk and Luhansk as so-called independent states, and the 2014 invasion of Ukraine by the Russian Federation and their illegal annexation of Crimea. C, calls upon the Russian Federation to immediately end the targeting of civilian infrastructure, including hospitals and schools. D, call upon the Government of Canada and all parties in the House of Commons to support A, the continued imposition of severe economic penalties, including sanctions targeting President Putin's inner circle, including Russian oligarchs, and those who have supported this egregious violation of international law. And B, the provision of support to the government of Ukraine, the Ukrainian armed forces, and the provision of humanitarian aid to the people of Ukraine. And C, the issuing of an order of general application directing the CRTC to a new broadcasting policy that would remove state-controlled broadcasters that spread disinformation and propaganda from the CRTC's list of non-Canadian programming services and stations authorized for distribution, effectively removing Russia Today from Canadian airwaves. And D, the removal of Russia from the SWIFT payment system a critical part of the global financial system, an action which must be pursued in collaboration with international partners. And E stands unwavering and united in our solidarity with the people of Ukraine.
All those opposed to the honourable member moving the motion will please say nay. Agreed? The House has heard the terms of the motion. All those opposed to the motion will please say nay. Carried. The Honourable Government House Leader is rising on a point of order.
He is. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I wish to inform the House that Thursday, March 3rd, 2022 shall be an allotted day. Thank you.
The tabling of, okay, 1 second. No. Tabling of documents. Dépôt de projet de loi émanant.
Introduction of government bills.
Statements by ministers.
Reports from interparliamentary delegations. Will may not be here.
Yeah, he's not. He's fine. Yeah, we got that. Presenting reports from committees. The Honourable Member for Waterloo.
Pursuant to standing orders, I have the honor of tabling both official languages the fourth report of the Standing Committee on Procedure and House Affairs concerning changes to membership of standing and standing joint committees. If the House gives its consent, I have the intention to table